We were walking toward the wedding venue when my son grabbed my arm. He leaned in and whispered, "Don't go inside." I froze, trying to understand. 2 minutes later, the sirens arrived, and then I saw my sister on the news. But let me back up, because what happened that day was the culmination of 15 years of my sister making my life hell, and my quiet son delivering the most beautiful revenge I never saw coming. My name is Emma, and I've been fighting an uphill battle against my family's golden child since I was 12 years old. While my sister Victoria was getting straight A's and dating the quarterback, I was the weird kid who read too much and asked uncomfortable questions. While she was getting a full scholarship to Princeton, I was working 2 jobs to pay for community college. While she was climbing the corporate ladder in Manhattan, I was raising my son Tyler alone after his father decided fatherhood wasn't his vibe. Victoria never let me forget our different paths in life. Every family gathering was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. She'd ask about my little apartment with that perfect concerned smile. She'd offer to help me network in a tone that made it clear she thought I was hopeless. When Tyler was younger, she'd give him expensive gifts I could never afford, then act like she was just trying to help. The worst part, our parents ate it up. Victoria was their success story, their proof that they'd raised a winner. I was their cautionary tale, the one they'd reference whenever they wanted to motivate other family members. "Don't end up like Emma," they'd say, struggling all the time. But Tyler and I, we had something Victoria never understood. We were a team. When he was 8 and kids at school made fun of his secondhand clothes, I taught him that real strength comes from knowing who you are, not what you wear. When he was 12 and Victoria made a snide comment about our cozy 2-bedroom apartment, he looked her right in the eye and said, "At least our home feels warm." That kid had been watching, learning, and apparently planning. Victoria's 3rd wedding was going to be her greatest production yet. She divorced her college boyfriend after he stopped being ambitious enough, and her 2nd marriage ended when she realized her husband lacked vision for growth. Now she was marrying Marcus Chen, a hedge fund golden boy who treated money like a sport and other people like game pieces. The engagement party alone cost more than I made in a year. Victoria made sure I knew this, along with every other detail about the investment opportunity Marcus had offered our family. "Emma, I know you don't have much to invest," she'd said during one of her visits, "but Marcus is doing me a favor by letting family members into his exclusive fund. Even $1,000 could turn into something significant for Tyler's future." I told her I couldn't afford to lose $1,000, which earned me that familiar look of pity mixed with disappointment. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps people where they are," she replied. "Our parents invested $20,000. Our Uncle Robert put in $15,000. Even our grandmother, who'd been saving for a new roof, gave them $8,000 because Victoria convinced her it was Tyler's college fund. I was the only family member who said no. And for months leading up to the wedding, I was reminded of this decision in increasingly creative ways. "It's so sad that Emma's pride prevents her from securing Tyler's future," Victoria told our mother, loud enough for me to hear during Easter dinner. "Some people are just too scared to take risks," Marcus added with that smug smile of his. "It's a poverty mindset. Very hard to break." Tyler, now 16, just watched these exchanges with those dark eyes that looked exactly like mine. He never said anything, but I could see him cataloging every slight, every condescending comment, every moment they made me feel small. The wedding was set for October 15th at the Grandview Estate. Victoria had shown me pictures of the venue approximately 47 times, each time mentioning the cost per head and how exclusive the guest list was. I was invited, obviously, but I got the distinct impression I was there to serve as contrast, the sister who could have had all this if she just made better choices. 3 days before the wedding, Tyler came home from school with a weird energy. He was quiet during dinner, but not in his usual thoughtful way. This was different, intense. "Mom," he said as I was washing dishes, "can I ask you something about Marcus?" "Sure, honey. What about him? Do you think Victoria knows what he really does for work?" I dried my hands and turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "He's in investment management." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "I've been doing some research for my economics project about financial fraud. There are a lot of red flags with his company." My 16-year-old son proceeded to pull out his laptop and show me weeks of research he'd been conducting. Articles about suspicious trading patterns at Marcus's firm. SEC filings that didn't add up, client testimonials that seemed fake, online reviews that had been scrubbed and replaced. Tyler, this is serious stuff. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I wanted to be sure. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Mom, I think Marcus is running a Ponzi scheme. And I think Victoria knows. The morning of the wedding, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. Tyler had been up late the night before, printing out documents and making phone calls to numbers he'd found buried in financial filings. When I asked him what he was doing, he just said, "Research, Mom. Just research." As we got dressed for the wedding, me in my one good dress from 3 years ago, Tyler in his graduation suit, he seemed unusually calm. Almost serene. "You know," he said as we drove toward the venue, "I used to be embarrassed that we weren't rich like Aunt Victoria. Tyler, you don't have to. Let me finish." His voice was steady, mature. "I used to think maybe you'd failed somehow. That maybe if you tried harder, we could have had the big house and the fancy cars." I felt my heart breaking a little. "Honey." But then I realized something. Victoria didn't get rich by being smart or working hard. She got rich by finding people to exploit. And you got poor by being honest. We pulled into the parking lot of the Grandview estate. Even from outside, you could see the opulence through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Flowers that cost more than my monthly rent. A string quartet in formal wear. Guests dripping in jewelry and designer clothes. Tyler and I walked toward the entrance, me feeling like a fraud in my discount dress, him looking oddly confident for someone about to enter a world that had always made us feel inferior. We were maybe 50 feet from the door when Tyler suddenly grabbed my arm. His grip was firm, urgent. "Don't go inside." I stopped walking. "What?" "Mom, please. Don't go inside. We need to stay out here." "Tyler, what are you talking about? The ceremony is about to start." His eyes met mine, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Not fear. Certainty. "Mom, do you trust me?" Of course I trusted him. This kid had been my partner, my ally, my best friend for 16 years. If Tyler said don't go inside, there was a reason. "Okay," I said. "We'll wait out here for a few minutes." Other guests streamed past us in their expensive outfits, some of them glancing at us curiously. I recognized a few faces, family friends, distant relatives, people who'd always looked at me like I was Victoria's unfortunate sister. 2 minutes later, I heard the sirens. Multiple sirens, getting louder, coming up the hill toward the estate. Tyler looked at me calmly. "Mom, I think we should move back toward the car. Police cars, FBI vehicles, a SWAT team van. They surrounded the building like something out of a movie." My phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Federal agents raid luxury wedding venue. Multiple arrests expected in major financial fraud investigation. I stared at Tyler, who was watching the chaos unfold with an expression that was part satisfaction, part vindication, and part something else I couldn't identify. "How did you know?" I whispered. "I didn't just research Marcus's company," he said quietly. "I called the FBI Financial Crimes tip line 3 days ago." The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, news vans and reporters. And then I saw her, Victoria, in her $10,000 wedding dress, being led out of the venue in handcuffs. The reporter on Channel 7 was explaining, "Victoria Chun, formerly Victoria Walsh, has been arrested alongside her husband Marcus Chun and 14 other individuals in connection with what the FBI is calling one of the largest Ponzi schemes in state history." Sources close to the investigation say Victoria was not merely an innocent victim, but served as a key recruiter, using her family connections and social status to bring in new investors. I watched my sister, the one who'd spent 15 years making me feel like a failure, being put into the back of a federal vehicle. My phone rang. It was my mother, sobbing. "Emma, are you watching the news? They took Victoria. They took our money. $20,000, Emma. It's gone. All of it." Over the next several weeks, the full scope of the scheme emerged. Victoria and Marcus had been running their operation for 3 years. Victoria's job was to recruit high-quality investors, people with money and trust, family members, church friends, country club connections. Our Uncle Robert lost $15,000. Our grandmother lost $8,000. Dozens of family friends lost their life savings. People who trusted Victoria because she was successful because she knew about money, because she was the golden child who never made mistakes. The investigators found records showing Victoria had made over $400,000 in recruiting commissions. Meanwhile, I was the sister who'd been quietly lending money to our grandmother when she couldn't afford her medications. I was the one who'd helped our uncle with his mortgage payments when his business struggled. All those years, they pitted me for being poor. Turns out, I was the only one who'd stayed honest. But Tyler wasn't done with his revenge. A week after the arrests, Detective Rodriguez called me. "Mrs. Walsh, I want you to know that your son's research was extraordinary. The documentation he provided helped us understand the full structure of the scheme and identify victims we hadn't found yet." "He's a smart kid," I said. "Mrs. Walsh, there's something else. Are you aware that several of the fraud victims have been asking about restitution funds?" "What do you mean?" "Well, when we raided the Chen residence, we found evidence that your sister had been systematically documenting every family member's financial situation. She kept detailed files on everyone's savings, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. Everyone except you. I was quiet. Mrs. Walsh, your sister's files show that she actively avoided targeting you for recruitment. There are notes in her handwriting that say things like, "Emma too suspicious," and "Emma asks too many questions." She knew you'd figure it out. 3 months later, I was sitting in a federal courtroom watching my sister's sentencing hearing. She got 8 years. Marcus got 15. Before they led her away, Victoria looked directly at me from the defendant's table. For the first time in my life, she looked at me without that condescending smile, without that air of superiority. She looked at me with something I'd never seen before, respect. After the hearing, Tyler and I walked out of the courthouse together. It was raining, one of those gentle autumn rains that makes everything smell clean. "Mom," Tyler said as we reached the car, "can I tell you something?" "Always. I didn't call the FBI to protect our family's money. I mean, that was part of it. But mostly," he paused, "mostly I was tired of watching them treat you like you were stupid, like you were the failure." I stopped walking and looked at my son, this incredible human being who'd somehow grown up to be braver and smarter and more moral than anyone in our family had ever been. "You know what the best part is," he continued. "All those years, Victoria thought she was better than us because she had money. But she never understood that the reason we didn't have money was because we weren't willing to steal it." 6 months later, I got a letter from Victoria in federal prison. It was 3 pages long, and it said everything I'd been waiting 15 years to hear. She was sorry. She knew she'd hurt innocent people. She knew she'd betrayed everyone's trust. But the part that got to me was near the end. "Emma, I need you to know that I always knew you were stronger than me. I spent our whole lives trying to prove I was better, but the truth is, I was always terrified of being like you. Not because you were poor, but because you were good. I couldn't handle being good. It seemed too hard, too thankless. I wanted shortcuts. I wanted easy success. I wanted people to admire me without earning it. You chose the harder path, and you raised a son who's going to change the world. I chose the easy path, and I ended up here. I'm proud to be your sister, even if I never acted like it." I folded the letter and put it in my jewelry box next to Tyler's acceptance letter to MIT. But the real vindication came a year later, during our family's first gathering since the scandal. Our parents, our Uncle Robert, our grandmother, they all looked at me differently now. The same people who'd spent years making me feel like the family disappointment were now asking me for advice about their finances, their decisions, their lives. My mother pulled me aside after dinner. "Emma," she said, her voice shaky with emotion, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We spent so many years thinking Victoria's success meant she was smarter than you. We never saw that your struggles meant you were stronger than all of us. The woman who'd raised me to believe I was the cautionary tale was finally seeing the truth. I wasn't the one who'd failed. I was the one who'd survived. These days, Tyler and I live in a slightly bigger apartment. Nothing fancy, but we have a second bathroom now, which feels like luxury after 16 years of sharing one. He's studying computer science and economics, and he wants to work for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit when he graduates. Sometimes I think about that day, walking toward the wedding venue. I think about the woman I was then, the one who felt ashamed of her discount dress and her old car and her small life. I know better now. The size of your life isn't measured by the size of your bank account. It's measured by the size of your integrity. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't being invited to the party. Sometimes it's having the wisdom to listen when your 16-year-old son whispers, "Don't go inside." Sometimes it's raising a kid who's willing to take down the people who hurt his mother, even when those people are family. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it tastes sweeter than any wedding cake ever could. If you found this story compelling, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. These real-life accounts take extensive research and careful telling, and your support helps me continue sharing these incredible stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary strength. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.